Hello and welcome to Support for Worried Homeschooling Parents. Firstly, before our story, a huge thank you to every single person who watches these videos. This week we hit 4,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. If there are specific areas you would like me to cover and discuss in a video, please do hit me in the comments. Thank you again. Now I would like to read you another story, this time from educational developmental psychologist Dr. Lucy Yamali. They told his parents he was failing, that he was unreachable, a lost cause adrift in a sea of teenage apathy. The official reports painted a picture of a defiant, checked-out kid, but I didn't see a failing teen. When I looked at him, I saw myself at 14, trapped in a system that didn't speak my language. And I knew that the path to reaching him wasn't through a textbook, a schedule, or another lecture about his potential. It was through a camera, a skateboard, and a healthy dose of what some might call organized chaos. This is the 6-week plan that didn't just help a homeschool teen pass a subject. It helped him find his voice, and, in doing so, saved him. My name is Dr. Lucy Yamali. I'm an educational developmental psychologist, and I also have ADHD, which is a bit like being a firefighter who occasionally, and with the best of intentions, sets small, manageable fires. My office is a fairly accurate map of my brain, chaotic, colourful, and littered with the ghosts of coffees past. For the last 3 years, I've been working with a family, a wonderful, loving, and profoundly exhausted family with a 14-year-old son named Kai. Kai is brilliant. He's funny in that dry, whip-smart way that keeps you on your toes. He's intensely curious about the world, just not the parts of it that come with homework. He's also been asked to leave 3 different schools, a record he seems both ashamed of and vaguely proud of. His parents, Sarah and James, finally pulled him out to homeschool. Sarah, a talented graphic designer, had heroically given up her freelance business to become his full-time teacher. James was working a demanding engineering job, the kind with long hours and zero tolerance for error, trying to keep them all afloat while the ship was taking on water. The tension in their house wasn't just thick, it was a physical presence. You could feel it from the end of the driveway, a low hum of anxiety and unspoken resentment. They had stacks of textbooks, colour-coded schedules that were masterpieces of organisation, and a list of qualifications they wanted him to start in the fall. But Kai wasn't learning. He was building a fortress of solitude, brick by sullen brick. The more they pushed traditional schoolwork, the further he disappeared. After 4 weeks of intensive observation, I'd produced a 4-inch thick file. Some of it is coffee-stained, which is just my filing system for critical insights. It was a paper trail of their shared misery. The conclusion was painfully, blindingly clear. The problem wasn't Kai. The problem was the communication. It hadn't just broken down, it had gone scorched earth. Section 1. The problem and the psychologist's insight. Parents of kids with ADHD often feel like they're speaking a different language from their child. And honestly, they are. The neurotypical brain often values linear, step-by-step processing. Kai's brain? It's a pinball machine of connections, firing off ideas in all directions. He is a kinesthetic learner to his core. He learns by doing, by feeling, by moving. Making him sit still with a book is like putting a lion in a birdcage. It's not just hard for him, it goes against his entire neurobiology. It's a form of sensory deprivation. The part of his brain that regulates attention, the part that craves engagement and dopamine, was being systematically starved. His parents, acting out of a fierce love and an even fiercer fear, were trying to force a square peg into a round hole, and the peg was starting to splinter. Their desperation was climbing. The 6-week summer holiday was looming, and they saw it as their last chance, a final, frantic boot camp to cram in enough real learning They wanted a new plan from me. More schedules, more structure, more textbooks. A military-grade academic intervention. Essentially, they wanted me to prescribe more of the poison, just in a prettier, colour-coded bottle. I knew that another schedule would be like throwing gasoline on a wildfire. We didn't need to double down on what was failing. We needed to burn the rulebook. It was time for a period of what homeschoolers call deschooling, a deceptively gentle term for what is often a household-wide nervous breakdown, followed, hopefully, by enlightenment. It's about detoxing from the idea that learning only happens between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. seated at a desk. It's about retraining everyone's brain to see that learning is not a place you go, but a thing you do, everywhere, all the time. One afternoon, in a moment of sheer frustration with me, Kai muttered, "You don't get it. None of you get my world." So I asked him to show me. He took me to a local skate park, a concrete landscape I'm sure his parents saw as a den of delinquency. But suddenly, this sullen, withdrawn boy came alive. He and his friends were a whirlwind of motion, but it wasn't chaos. It was a community. It was a physics lab. They cheered each other on, gave constructive feedback, and celebrated every tiny victory with an energy that was pure, uncut joy. Then he showed me his phone. He was hesitant, as if showing me a secret diary. It was filled with photos and short videos he'd taken. Grainy, artistic shots of a scuffed-up board, slow-motion clips of a friend wiping out, a perfectly framed photo of the sunset through a chain-link fence. He started talking, really talking, about his favourite skate photographers, the filters he liked, the editing apps he used, the music he paired with his edits. Watching him, it hit me like a lightning bolt. He wasn't failing at learning at all. He was learning physics every time he adjusted his centre of gravity. He was learning art with every photo he framed. He was learning tenacity, community, and resilience every single time he fell and got back up. He had found his own curriculum, and that's when the plan clicked. It was radical. It was terrifying. It involved no textbooks, no lesson plans, and no structured learning. Just a decent camera, a skateboard, and a 6-week mission. A plan guaranteed to give any well-meaning parent a mild but entirely necessary heart attack. Section 2. The plan. I sat down with Sarah and James. The air was thick with their expectation. They were visibly bracing themselves for a 20-page document that would micromanage their son's every waking moment. Instead, I pushed my coffee-stained file aside, a symbolic gesture they didn't appreciate nearly enough, and said, "For the next 6 weeks, there is only one assignment. Kai is going to create a project about his world, about skateboarding. He can photograph it, film it, write about it, whatever he wants. His only job is to document his summer and, at the end, present it to you." They looked at me with the polite, strained silence of people who think their psychologist has finally had one too many half-finished cups of coffee. "But what about his math?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with an anxiety that was years in the making. "And English? History?" James added, ever the pragmatist. "How does playing with a camera get him ready for a job?" I held my ground. "This isn't about abandoning those subjects," I explained. "It's about finding a new door in. Do you know how much math is involved in video editing? Timings, frame rates, sequencing, aspect ratios. How much literacy goes into telling a visual story? He'll be writing with light and motion instead of a pen. He'll be learning the history of the sport, the engineering of the boards, the biology of his own body." I leaned in. For kids with ADHD, who often struggle with executive function, seeing the big picture of a project first is a game changer. A textbook is a series of disconnected facts. This project has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It harnesses that amazing, powerful ADHD trait of hyperfocus for a creative purpose. This project wasn't just about photography. It was a Trojan horse, a beautiful, wooden, skateboard-shaped horse. The real mission was to rebuild a demolished bridge, to give Kai a language his parents could finally understand, and to show them the intelligent, capable, passionate son hiding behind a wall of frustration. I told them this was their chance to stop being his teachers and start being his audience. The camera would be his voice, the skateboard his classroom. The summer was our deadline. Reluctantly, with the energy of people walking a tightrope without a net, they agreed. Section 3. The journey. Weeks 1 to 6. The first 2 weeks were what we in the biz call a therapeutic disaster. Getting a teen who has been burned by the system to engage with a project from a psychologist was, predictably, a challenge. The camera I'd loaned him sat on his desk gathering dust, mocking me. He skated, but he was sullen, convinced this was just another adult trick, another form of school in disguise. My check-ins were met with one-word answers. His parents hovered, radiating an anxiety so powerful, I'm surprised the plants in their house survived. Sarah tried to help by printing out a list of artistic photography subjects, which included a bowl of fruit and the family dog. Kai crumpled it up. The deadline was ticking, and we were failing. Then, around the start of week 3, with the finish line looking impossibly far away, I deployed a radical therapeutic technique. I shut up about the project. Completely. During our check-in, I just asked him about skating. He mentioned a new trick he was trying to land, a rock to fakie on the mini-ramp. It was tough. He kept bailing, smacking his shin on the board. He was frustrated. On a whim, I said, forget the project. Just film the falls. Don't worry about making anything good. Just document the process. The failure is the story. Something in that resonated with him. Permission to fail. The next day, he sent me a 30-second clip, a raw, gritty montage of him wiping out over and over, set to a fast-paced punk song. It was honest, it was funny, and it was the first real piece of communication I'd had from him. That tiny breakthrough opened a floodgate. He started carrying the camera everywhere. He was actively learning it, f-stops, shutter speeds, focus, composition. I saw him watching online tutorials, lost in that magical ADHD hyperfocus state where he could probably learn quantum physics if it was presented in a 10-minute video with a good soundtrack. He wasn't being forced to learn. He was pulling the information in because he times wanted times to. The dopamine hit he got from nailing a shot, from capturing a moment perfectly, was more motivating than any grade or gold star could ever be. By week 5, he was a different kid. He'd commandeered the family laptop, teaching himself professional video editing software. The house, once filled with the silence of tension, was now filled with the clicks of an editing timeline and snippets of indie music. The war zone was becoming a studio. One evening, during a visit, I saw him show his dad a photo he was proud of, a black and white shot of his friend suspended in mid-air, the city blurred behind him. James, the engineer, the man of data and results, didn't ask about the camera settings or how this would translate to a grade. He just looked at it for a long time and said, "Wow, Kai, the focus is incredible. That's really beautiful." It was such a small moment, but it was the entire point. A conversation that wasn't a conflict, but a connection. Section 4. The climax and resolution. The last day of the 6th week arrived, the deadline. We gathered in the living room, the atmosphere buzzing with a mixture of hope and pure terror. Kai was visibly nervous, clutching the laptop like it was a shield that might protect him from parental feedback. Sarah and James sat on the sofa, looking like they were about to be briefed on a hostage situation. Kai dimmed the lights and hit play. The film was stunning. It wasn't a skate video. It was a 5-minute visual poem to his summer, to his world. It started with the messy, frustrating falls from week 3, the very clips he'd sent me, but then it transitioned, with a perfectly timed music shift, into the triumph of him finally landing that rock to fakie, filmed in glorious slow motion. But it wasn't just about him. He had included breathtaking portraits of his friends, capturing their personalities in a single shot. There were close-ups of sticker-covered boards and worn-out shoes, wide shots of the sprawling, sun-drenched city. He had captured the culture, the community, the feeling of freedom. He used music to build emotion, cutting the clips perfectly to the rhythm, showing an intuitive grasp of narrative pacing. He was telling his story in his language. When it finished, the room was quiet, the kind of silence that makes a psychologist hold their breath and mentally review their liability insurance. Sarah had tears streaming down her face. She wasn't sad, she was dumbstruck. "I never knew," she whispered, looking at Kai as if for the first time. "I never knew all of this was inside you." James, the pragmatist, turned to Kie, not as a father lecturing a son, but with genuine, unadulterated curiosity. "How did you learn to do all this?" And Kai, the boy of one-word answers, just opened up. He talked for 20 minutes straight. He talked about YouTube tutorials, about learning from his friends, about the process of trying and failing and trying again. He explained his creative choices, why he chose that song, why he cut from a wide shot to a close-up. He wasn't just talking about skateboarding, he was articulating his process, his passion, his perspective. The communication gap hadn't just been bridged, it had been flooded with light. Kai wasn't a problem to be solved, he was a person to be understood. CTA and conclusion. That fall, Kai didn't start a rigid academic course. Instead, with his parents' full support, he enrolled in a part-time digital media course at a local college, using his summer project as his portfolio. The arguments about school were replaced by conversations about his projects. The war was over. The peace treaty was a 5-minute film about skateboarding. If you're a parent watching this, especially if you have a child who learns differently, I hope Kai's story shows you that there is always another way. Sometimes the path to success isn't a straight, well-paved road. Sometimes it looks like a kid on a skateboard with a camera, falling and getting back up again. The most important, and often the hardest, thing we can do is give our kids the space to find their own language, and then, with all the humility we can muster, really, truly learn how to listen. What about you? Have you ever had to burn the rulebook to help your child? Have you found an unconventional key that helped unlock their potential? Share your story in the comments below. We can all learn from each other, and it makes for fascinating reading. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe for more stories on creative parenting and thriving with ADHD. This journey doesn't have to be a lonely one. To hear more fictional stories based on true events and facts, click here or watch this other video. Thank you. See you in the next video.